For 3 years, Naomi wrote love letters to the man she lost, until one drifts into the hands of a grieving stranger. But behind his gentle words lies a secret that could bury their fragile connection for good. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Zaraya Cole's hands shook as she balanced the heavy tray of champagne flutes. The crystal glasses clinked together, threatening to spill their golden contents onto the polished marble floor of the Cross Mansion. "Easy there," her cousin Marcus whispered as he passed by with his own tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Just another hour and we're done." Zaraya nodded, forcing a smile. She shouldn't be here. This wasn't her world. All these people in designer clothes talking about vacation homes and stock portfolios. She was a graphic designer from Brooklyn who spent her days creating logos for small businesses and her nights worrying about her mother's medical bills. "I can't believe I let you talk me into this," she muttered when Marcus circled back to her. "I don't belong here." "They're paying triple the normal rate, and you said you needed the money," Marcus reminded her. "Besides, nobody's even looking at us. We're just furniture to these people." He was right. The guests barely glanced at her as they plucked glasses from her tray. To them, she was invisible. Usually that would bother her, but tonight it was a relief. Zaraya scanned the crowded ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over New York's elite as they laughed and networked. But there was one face she hadn't seen all evening. "Is he even here?" she asked. "The man who owns this place?" Marcus shrugged. "Damien Cross? I heard he rarely shows up to his own parties. Too busy counting his billions, I guess." Then, why throw them? For show, it's all for show. Zaraya's bladder suddenly reminded her she'd been working for 3 hours straight. "I need to find a bathroom. Can you cover for me?" Marcus nodded, taking her tray. "Down that hallway, third door on the right." Zaraya slipped away from the crowd, feeling instant relief as the noise faded behind her. The hallway was dimly lit and surprisingly quiet, with modern art pieces hanging on the walls and soft, recessed lighting that created pools of warm light. On the floor. "Third door on the right," she mumbled to herself, walking down the corridor. But when she reached what should have been the bathroom, she found herself at a junction of 3 more hallways. "Great," she muttered. She chose the path to her left, moving deeper into the mansion. This hallway was darker, lined with sleek, modern doors, all closed except for one at the very end, which was slightly ajar with a soft light spilling out. Zaraya approached it hesitantly. "Hello, is this the bathroom?" No answer. She pushed the door open wider and peeked inside. The room was unlike anything she'd seen before, minimalist and high-tech, with screens on one wall and what looked like a small living area with a couch. And table. "Hello?" she called again, stepping fully inside. The door swung shut behind her with a heavy thud, followed by the unmistakable sound of locks engaging. Zaraya spun around, grabbing the handle. It wouldn't budge. "Hey!" she called, pounding on the door. "I'm in here, the door locked." No response. She tried again, hitting the door harder. "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" Nothing. Panic began to rise in her chest as she realized the room was completely soundproof. No one would hear her no matter how loudly she screamed. "Don't panic," she told herself, taking deep breaths. "Just think." She examined the room more carefully. There were no windows, and the walls appeared to be made of some kind of reinforced material. On one wall was a panel with what looked like a control system, but it required a fingerprint scan. "What is this place?" she whispered, her heart racing. Then it hit her. This wasn't just a room. It was a panic room. A secure bunker built for emergencies, and she was trapped inside. Damien Cross stood on the balcony of his penthouse office, gazing down at the party happening 3 floors below. From here, the people looked like ants, scurrying around with their drinks and their fake laughs, all hoping to catch a glimpse of him, the reclusive billionaire who'd revolutionized security software. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It was probably his assistant Vanessa, trying to convince him to make an appearance downstairs. It buzzed again, and again. With a sigh, he pulled it out. But it wasn't Vanessa. It was a security alert. "Motion detected. Panic room 3B. Damien frowned. No one should be in that part of the house. He'd specifically closed it off for the party. He unlocked his tablet and pulled up the security feed. Inside the panic room was a woman he'd never seen before. Young, with brown skin and curly black hair pulled back in a simple bun. She wore a plain black dress, clearly not a guest, probably staff. She was pacing back and forth, talking to herself, occasionally pushing against the door. "Damn it," he muttered. He activated the intercom. "You're safe. Don't panic. I'm coming." "To you." The deep, smooth voice filled the room so suddenly that Zariah jumped. She looked around, trying to find its source. "Who's there? Where are you?" "My name is Damien Cross. This is my home." "You've accidentally entered one of my secure rooms." Zariah felt her face flush with embarrassment and relief. "I'm so sorry. I was looking for the bathroom and got lost. The door was open, and then it just locked behind me." There was a pause. "The door shouldn't have been open. I'll be there in a moment to let you out." "Thank you," she said, feeling slightly calmer. "I'm Zariah Cole. I'm helping with the catering tonight." No response. The intercom had gone silent. Zariah sat down on the edge of the small couch, trying to slow her racing heart. At least she knew someone was coming. But what would he think? Would he call the police? Accuse her of trespassing? Her mother couldn't handle the stress of her daughter getting arrested. Not while fighting stage 3 breast cancer. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, she heard movement outside the door, the sound of beeping followed by mechanical whirring. But then, nothing. "Mr. Cross," she called out. The intercom crackled. "There's a problem with the override. The secondary security protocol has activated." "What does that mean?" "It means the room has gone into lockdown. It's designed to do that, if someone tries to force entry." "But I didn't force anything. The door was open." "I know, something in the system has malfunctioned." Zariah felt panic rising again. "How long will I be stuck in here? I need to get my security team to reset the system. It might take a few hours." "Hours?" Zariah pressed her palms against her eyes. "I can't stay here for hours. My cousin will worry, and I need to get home to check on my mother." There was a long silence. "I'm sorry about this," Damien said finally. "I'll make sure your cousin knows where you are, and I can send someone to check on your mother if needed." "No, it's not." Zariah stopped. How could she explain that her mother needed her medication at exactly 10 p.m. and that she'd been counting on tonight's pay to buy groceries for the week? Suddenly, there was another series of beeps from the door. "What's happening?" she asked. No answer. The door opened and a man stepped inside. Zariah recognized him immediately from magazine covers and news segments. Damien Cross was taller than she expected, with broad shoulders under his perfectly tailored suit. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, strong jaw, straight nose. His eyes were startlingly blue against his tanned skin, and his dark hair was neatly styled. Before she could speak, the door closed behind him with the same heavy thud she'd heard earlier. "What are you doing?" she asked, confused. Damien walked to the control panel and pressed his palm against it. Red text flashed across the screen. "System error. Manual override failed." "I thought I could reset it from inside," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "But it's not working." Zariah stared at him, realization dawning. Are we both locked in here now?" He turned to face her, his expression grim. "Yes, Ms. Cole. It appears we are." "You locked yourself in here?" Zariah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Why would you do that?" Damien loosened his tie. "I designed this system myself. I thought I could override it from the inside panel." He glanced at his watch. "My security team will notice I'm missing soon. They'll figure out where we are." "And how long will that take?" "A few hours, at most." Zariah sank back onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "This can't be happening." Damien stood awkwardly in the center of the room, looking unsure of what to do. Finally, he removed his suit jacket and hung it over a chair. "Can I get you something to drink?" "There's water and some snacks in the cabinet." Zariah looked up at him in disbelief. "You're offering me snacks? Like this is some kind of sleepover?" His expression hardened. "I'm trying to make the best of an unfortunate situation, Ms. Cole." "Zariah," she corrected automatically. "And I'm sorry, but this is more than unfortunate for me. I need to get home to my mother. She's sick and she needs her medication." Something in Damien's face softened. "I understand. Let me help. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Vanessa, I need you to do something for me. He glanced at Zariah. What's your address? Zariah hesitated, then gave it to him. Send someone to that address immediately. Tell them to identify themselves as a friend of Zariah's. There's an older woman there who needs medication at 10 p.m. He paused, listening. Yes, I'm aware there's a party happening. This is more important. Another pause. No, I won't be down. Handle it. He hung up and turned to Zariah. Someone will be there within the hour to help your mother. Zariah didn't know what to say. Thank you. Damien nodded, then moved to a small refrigerator built into the wall. He took out 2 bottles of water and offered one to her. So he said, sitting in a chair across from her, how did you end up in here? Zariah took the water. I told you I was looking for the bathroom. My cousin Marcus is with the catering company. He needed extra help and I needed the money. She took a sip. I got lost, saw the door open and thought it might be the bathroom. The door shouldn't have been open, Damien said again, frowning, and the lock shouldn't have malfunctioned. Well, it did, Zariah said, and now we're both stuck. She looked around the room. So this is your panic room. Do billionaires have a lot to panic about? A hint of a smile touched his lips. More than you'd think. They fell into an uncomfortable silence. Zariah fidgeted with her water bottle, acutely aware of how out of place she was. Meanwhile, Damien sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. Why do you throw these parties if you don't even attend them? She asked suddenly. Damien looked surprised by the question. Business, networking, it's expected. Expected by who? He shrugged. The board, the investors, the public. So you hide up here while everyone down there pretends to be your friend? His eyes narrowed. You're very direct, Ms. Cole. Zariah, she reminded him. And yes, I am. Life's too short not to be. Is that why you were talking to yourself in here before I arrived? Zariah felt her cheeks warm. You were watching me? Security cameras, he said, gesturing to a small lens in the corner. Standard in a panic room. Great, she muttered. So you saw me freaking out. I saw someone trying to stay calm in a stressful situation, he corrected. It was admirable. Zariah studied him, trying to figure out if he was mocking her, but his expression seemed genuine. This isn't how I planned to spend my evening, she said with a sigh. Nor I, Damien agreed. But perhaps we can make the best of it. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me about your mother. Zariah was caught off guard by the personal question. She has breast cancer, stage 3. She's been fighting it for 8 months now. I'm sorry to hear that. The treatments are expensive, even with insurance. That's why I took this job tonight. She gave a humorless laugh. Ironic, right? I came here for money, and now I'm locked in a room with one of the richest men in the country. Damien didn't laugh. Life has a strange way of bringing people together. Their eyes met, and for a moment Zariah felt something shift in the air between them. Then his phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He checked it, his face darkening. It's going to be longer than I thought. How much longer? The system requires a complete reboot. It won't be until morning. Zariah's stomach dropped. Morning? I can't stay here all night. I'm afraid we don't have a choice. Damien stood up and walked to a cabinet, opening it to reveal bedding and pillows. At least it's comfortable. There's a bathroom through that door and plenty of food. Zariah watched him in disbelief as he calmly began preparing the couch as a makeshift bed. How are you so calm about this? She demanded. Damien paused, looking at her. Panicking won't open the door any faster. But don't you have somewhere to be? People waiting for you? A shadow passed over his face. No, Ms. Cole, I don't. For the first time, Zariah saw something beyond the cool, controlled exterior, a glimpse of something that looked almost like loneliness. It's Zariah, she said softly, and I guess we have all night to get it right. Damien's serious expression softened just slightly. I guess we do. Zariah, I've written part 1 of the story following your guidelines. The narrative establishes Zariah's financial struggles and her mother's illness, how she accidentally gets trapped in Damien's panic room, Damien's decision to enter the room and their subsequent entrapment together. The beginning of their interaction in this confined space, The contrast between their worlds and personalities. I've kept the language simple and direct, focusing on the characters' actions and emotions, rather than complex descriptions. The narrative follows a linear timeline and establishes the foundation for their relationship to develop in subsequent parts. The night stretched on in the panic room. Zariah sat on one end of the couch while Damien worked on his phone, occasionally, making quiet calls to his security team. The room was surprisingly comfortable, with soft lighting that could be adjusted and a temperature control system that kept it perfectly cool. "Your cousin knows you're safe," Damien said, putting his phone down. "I had my assistant explain the situation." "Did she tell him I'm locked in a panic room with his boss's boss's boss?" Zariah asked with a hint of sarcasm. The corner of Damien's mouth twitched. "Something like that." Zariah pulled her knees up to her chest. "This is by far the strangest night of my life." "Mine too," Damien admitted. He hesitated, then added, "I don't usually spend much time with people." "What, billionaires don't have friends?" He didn't answer immediately. "I have colleagues, business partners, acquaintances. But not friends? Not many." He stood up and walked to the small kitchenette area. "Are you hungry? There's some food in here." Zariah realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since lunch. "Yes, actually." "What do you have in your fancy bunker?" Damien opened a cabinet. Canned goods mostly, some dried fruits, protein bars. He pulled out a few items. "Not exactly the catering from upstairs." "I'll take whatever," Zariah said. "I missed dinner too. Be here." Damien arranged some food on a plate and brought it over to her. Crackers, dried fruit, nuts, and some kind of canned meat spread. "Sorry it's not more impressive." "Are you kidding? This is the first time I've sat down all night." She took the plate gratefully. "Thank you." He nodded and made a plate for himself, though he barely touched it as he sat back down. "So," Zariah said between bites, "why does a man who lives in a fortress need a panic room?" Damien's expression turned guarded. "Security is my business." "Your business is software, from what I've read. This seems personal." He looked away, his jaw tightening. "I value my privacy." "Clearly," Zariah said. "But there's privacy, and then there's—" She gestured around. "This." Damien was quiet for so long that Zariah thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more controlled. "When I was 19, our family home was broken into. My parents were killed." The words were flat, emotionless. "I was away at college. My sister was the only one home. She hid in a closet for 3 hours while they ransacked the house." Zariah felt her heart drop. "I'm so sorry." "The police said it was a robbery gone wrong. Just bad luck." His eyes were distant. "But I don't believe in bad luck. I believe in preparation in control." "So you built this?" "I built many things," he said. "My first security software patent was filed 6 months after their funeral. I designed this house myself. Every lock, every camera, every safe room. To keep people out," Zariah said softly. Damien looked at her, his blue eyes intense. "To keep safe what matters." The weight of his words hung in the air between them. Zariah put her plate down, suddenly understanding the man sitting across from her a little better. "My dad died when I was 15, she said. "Car accident, drunk driver." Damien's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry. After that, it was just me and Mom. She worked 2 jobs to put me through school. Now it's my turn to take care of her." Zariah smiled sadly. "We don't have panic rooms or security systems. We just have each other." "That's more than many people have," Damien said quietly. They fell silent again, but the tension in the room had changed. It wasn't awkward anymore, but thoughtful, as if they were both seeing each other more clearly. "What time is it?" Zariah asked after a while. Damien checked his watch. "Almost midnight." "My feet are killing me. I've been standing since 4 o'clock." She slipped off her practical black flats and rubbed her soles. "You should rest," Damien said. "Take the couch, I'll use the chair." "I can't take your couch, it's your panic room." "Please," he insisted. "I rarely sleep anyway." Zariah was too tired to argue. "Wake me if anything changes with the door?" "Of course." She stretched out on the couch, using one of the pillows he'd taken from the cabinet. Damien dimmed the lights and moved to the chair across the room, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone. Despite her exhaustion, Zariah found it hard to fall asleep with him sitting there. "Do you really not sleep?" she asked. "4 hours a night usually," he replied without looking up. "That's not healthy. Neither is working 2 jobs while going to school, I imagine." Zariah propped herself up on her elbow. "How did you know I was in school?" Now he looked up. "Your bag. Before they brought it in, I saw a student ID card for Brooklyn Community College. Graphic design," she said. "Part-time. You're an artist?" "I try to be. Mostly I do freelance work for small businesses, logos, websites, that kind of thing." Damien nodded. "My sister is artistic. She paints. Is she the one who was there when—" "Yes." His voice became tight again. "She lives in Europe now, as far from here as possible. You stayed, though." "I had work to do." Zariah studied him in the dim light. For someone so wealthy and powerful, he seemed hollow somehow, like a man who had built an empire but forgotten why. "Do you like what you do?" she asked. The question seemed to surprise him. "Like it? Your work, does it make you happy?" Damien considered this. "It's successful. It's important." "That's not what I asked." He frowned slightly. "Happiness is a luxury not everyone can afford." "Ms. Cole." "Zariah," she corrected automatically. "And that's the saddest thing I've ever heard a billionaire say." Damien actually laughed, a short surprise sound that seemed to catch him off guard as much as it did her. "You're very blunt. Life's too short not to be," she said again, smiling a little. She lay back down, feeling her eyelids grow heavy. The last thing she saw before drifting off was Damien still watching her, an unreadable expression on his face. Zariah woke to the smell of coffee. She opened her eyes to find Damien standing by the kitchenette, pouring hot water into 2 mugs. "You have coffee in here?" she asked groggily, sitting up. "Instant," he said apologetically, "but it's better than nothing." Zariah checked her watch. 6:30 a.m. "Any news on the door?" "They're working on it. Should be soon." He brought her a mug. "Black okay. There's no milk." "Black is fine." She took it gratefully, the warmth seeping into her hands. "Thank you." Damien looked different this morning. His hair was slightly mussed and he'd rolled up his sleeves and unbuttoned his collar. Without his suit jacket and tie, he looked almost normal. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. "A little." He sat down with his own coffee. "You talk in your sleep." Zariah felt her face heat up. "I do not. What did I say?" "Something about colors not being right." "And your mother's name? Sarah?" "Sarah," she corrected. "Without the H." He nodded. "Someone from my staff checked on her last night. Said she took her medication and was resting comfortably." Relief washed over Zariah. "Thank you for doing that. It was the least I could do after locking you in here." "Technically, I locked myself in. You just joined the party." A smile tugged at his lips. "First time my security system has ever backfired quite like this. First time for everything." Zariah sipped her coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. "Even bad coffee. I'll make a note to stock better coffee in all future panic rooms, along with milk and sugar. Of course." They shared a small smile, and Zariah felt something warm spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. The moment was interrupted by Damien's phone buzzing. He checked it, his expression brightening. "They've reset the system. The door should unlock in about 15 minutes. "Oh." Zariah was surprised at the twinge of disappointment she felt. "That's good." "Yes." Damien put his phone down. "You can get back to your life. And you to yours." An awkward silence fell between them. "What will you tell people?" Zariah asked. "About why you disappeared from your own party?" Damien shrugged. "The truth, that there was a security malfunction. Will you mention me?" He studied her face. "Do you want me to?" Zariah thought about it. "No, I don't think so. I'd rather not be in the tabloids as the cater waiter who got trapped with Damien Cross. Then no one will know you were here. Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "For everything. Checking on my mom, not having me arrested for trespassing. You didn't trespass, he said firmly, and I should be thanking you. For what? For making an unfortunate situation less unfortunate. It wasn't exactly a compliment, but coming from him, it felt like one. A beeping sound from the control panel interrupted them. Damien stood and walked over to it, pressing his palm against the scanner. This time the screen flashed green. "It's ready," he said. Zariah stood, suddenly aware of her rumpled dress and messy hair. "I must look a mess." "You look fine," Damien said, then quickly added, "The staff entrance is down the east corridor. I can have someone show you out that way if you prefer, to avoid questions." "Yes, that would be good." Zariah gathered her few belongings. Damien pressed a button, and the heavy door slid open with a hiss. Standing outside was a tall woman in a crisp suit, her hair pulled back, in a tight bun. "Mr. Cross," she said, her eyes flickering briefly to Zariah. "Everything is prepared as requested." "Thank you, Vanessa." Damien turned to Zariah. "My assistant will show you out." Zariah nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of reality returning. The night in the panic room already felt like a strange dream. "Goodbye, Mr. Cross," she said formally. "Goodbye, Ms. Cole." He hesitated, then added softly, "Zariah." She followed Vanessa down a series of hallways, away from the main part of the house where workers were cleaning up from the previous night's party. No one gave her a second glance. "Your cousin left this for you," Vanessa said, handing her a small bag. "And Mr. Cross instructed me to give you this." She handed Zariah an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. Zariah stopped walking. "I can't accept this." Mr. Cross was very clear. He said it was compensation for your inconvenience. "It wasn't his fault. I can't take his money." Vanessa's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "Between us, he pays people much more for much less of his time. Just take it." Zariah hesitated, thinking of her mother's medical bills and the rent that was due next week. Slowly, she put the check in her bag. "There's a car waiting to take you home," Vanessa said, leading her to a side door. "The driver has been instructed to wait if you need to stop anywhere." "Thank you." Outside, a sleek black car idled in the driveway. The driver opened the door for her. As Zariah settled into the back seat, she looked up at the massive house. Somewhere, inside was a man who had everything money could buy, but who seemed to have so little of what truly mattered. She pulled out her phone and found 3 missed calls from her mother and several texts from Marcus asking where she'd disappeared to. She would have a lot of explaining to do when she got home. The car pulled away from the Cross estate, taking her back to her real life. A life that suddenly felt both more grounded and somehow smaller than it had just 24 hours ago. 2 days later, Zariah sat at her small desk in the corner of the living room, working on a logo design for a local bakery. Her mother was napping in the bedroom, the new medication from the expensive specialist already showing promising results. Zariah had used part of Damien's money to pay for the appointment her mother had been putting off for months. The rest she'd put aside for rent and future treatments. She still felt strange about taking it, but as her mother said, sometimes pride has to take a back seat to practicality. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. She'd set it up after returning home, curious despite herself about what would be said about Damien's disappearance from his own party, Tech Billionaire. Damien Cross announces new security initiative after minor system failure at home. Zariah clicked on the article. There was a photo of Damien at a press conference, looking exactly as he had when she'd first seen him enter the panic room. Perfectly put together, remote, untouchable. According to the article, he'd announced a new grant for cybersecurity research after experiencing a minor system failure during a charity event at his home. There was no mention of anyone being trapped or of Damien himself spending the night locked in his own panic room. Zariah felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. What had she expected? That he would tell the world about their night together? That he would mention the woman in the black dress who had talked to him about happiness and loss? Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Cole, I hope this message finds you well. I've taken the liberty of having your number transferred from our security log, There's a matter I'd like to discuss with you if you're amenable. DC. Zoraya stared at the screen, her heart suddenly racing. She typed back, "What matter would that be, Mr. Cross?" The response came quickly. "One better discussed in person. Are you available for dinner tomorrow evening?" Zoraya bit her lip, thinking. Then she typed, "I don't leave my mother alone in the evenings." 3 dots appeared, then, "Of course. Perhaps lunch then. I can send a car." Zoraya hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, to put the strange night behind her and move on with her life. But another part, a stronger part, was curious. "Lunch works, but I can take the subway. Just tell me where." This time the response took longer. Finally, "The car will be there at noon. The driver knows the location." Zoraya shook her head, smiling despite herself. "Fine, but this better not be about the check. I've already spent it." "It's not about the check." "Until tomorrow, Zoraya." She put her phone down, her design work forgotten. What could Damien Cross possibly want to discuss with her? And why did the thought of seeing him again make her stomach flutter with something that felt dangerously like excitement? The next day, the black car pulled up in front of Zoraya's apartment building at exactly noon. She'd spent more time than she cared to admit deciding what to wear, finally settling on a simple blue dress that was nicer than her usual jeans and t-shirt, but not fancy enough to make it seem like she was trying too hard. "You look beautiful," her mother said as Zoraya checked her reflection one last time. "It's just lunch, Mom," Sarah Cole smiled knowingly, "with a billionaire who locked himself in a room with you all night." "When you say it like that, it sounds weird." "Life is weird, honey." Sarah adjusted her daughter's collar. "Just be yourself. If he wanted to have lunch with someone fancy, he has plenty of options." Zoraya hugged her mother carefully, mindful of how fragile she still was. "I'll be back in a couple of hours. Call if you need anything. Go have fun. I've got my shows to watch and pills to take." Sarah shooed her toward the door. "And don't you dare rush back on my account." The driver opened the car door as Zoraya approached. "Good afternoon, Ms. Cole." "Hi," she said, feeling awkward as she slid into the back seat. "Where are we going?" "Mr. Cross has reserved the rooftop at 70 Blue." Zoraya's eyes widened. 70 Blue was one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, famous for its stunning views and months-long waiting list. The drive took them into Manhattan, through busy streets and past towering skyscrapers. Finally, they pulled up in front of a sleek building with a discreet entrance and a single blue door. "Mr. Cross is already waiting upstairs," the driver said, opening her door. "The elevator will take you directly to the rooftop." Zoraya thanked him and walked into the building, feeling increasingly out of place. A host greeted her immediately. "Ms. Cole, this way, please." He led her to a private elevator at the back of the lobby. Inside, there was only one button. The host pressed it and stepped back. "Enjoy your lunch," he said as the doors closed. The elevator rose swiftly and silently. When the doors opened again, Zoraya stepped out onto a rooftop garden that took her breath away. Lush plants surrounded elegant tables, with the city skyline spreading out in every direction. And standing at the far end, looking out over the view, was Damien Cross. He turned as she approached, and for just a moment his composed expression softened into something that looked almost like pleasure. "Zoraya," he said, "thank you for coming." She took a deep breath and stepped forward into whatever this unexpected lunch might bring. "I've written part 2 of the story, continuing the development of Zoraya and Damien's relationship. In this section, they spend the night locked in the panic room, gradually opening up to each other. We learn about Damien's tragic past that explains his obsession with security. Zoraya shares her own struggles with her mother's illness. They're finally released in the morning, and Damien gives Zoraya money as compensation. 2 days later, Damien contacts Zoraya and invites her to lunch. The part ends with Zoraya arriving at an exclusive restaurant to meet him. The narrative maintains the straightforward style you requested, focusing on the characters' emotional development and the growing connection between them. I've kept the language simple and direct while building tension for their next encounter. Zoraya approached the table where Damien stood waiting. The rooftop was completely empty except for them. No other diners, no visible staff. "Did you rent out the entire restaurant?" she asked. unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "Just the rooftop," Damien replied, pulling out a chair for her. "I thought you might prefer privacy." "Most people just ask for a corner table," Zariah said as she sat down. A hint of a smile crossed his face. "I'm not most people, clearly." She looked around at the stunning garden setting, with Manhattan spread out below them. "This is beautiful." Damien took his seat across from her. He was dressed more casually than she'd seen him before, dark slacks and a light blue button-down. Shirt with no tie. He still looked impeccable, but somehow more approachable. "How is your mother?" he asked. "Better, actually. I used some of your money to take her to a specialist we couldn't afford before. They adjusted her medication, and she's responding well." Zariah met his eyes directly. "Thank you for that. It made a real difference." Damien nodded, looking pleased. "I'm glad to hear it." A waiter appeared silently at their table, carrying 2 glasses of water and a bottle of wine. I took the liberty of ordering a selection of dishes, Damien said. "I hope you don't mind. The chef here is exceptional." "That's fine," Zariah said, though she couldn't help adding, "Do you always make decisions for other people?" "Often," he admitted. "It's efficient, but not very considerate." Damien paused, then nodded slowly. "You're right. What would you like to drink? Wine? Something else?" "Water is fine for now," Zariah said, surprised by his concession. The waiter poured water into her glass and then disappeared as quietly as he'd arrived. "So," Zariah said after a moment, "what's this matter you wanted to discuss?" Damien seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. "I have a proposition for you." "A proposition?" Zariah raised an eyebrow. "That sounds ominous." "A business proposition," he clarified quickly. "I've been looking at your work." "My work? How? Your website, your online portfolio?" He pulled out a tablet from a case beside his chair and placed it on the table. "Your designs are good. Very good, actually." Zariah felt a mixture of flattery and unease. "You researched me." "I did." He didn't sound apologetic. "I like to know who I'm dealing with." "And what exactly are we dealing with, Mr. Cross?" "Damien," he corrected. "And I'd like to hire you." The waiter returned with a tray of small, artfully arranged appetizers. He set them down and left without a word. Zariah stared at Damien. "Hire me for what?" "Cross Security is launching a new consumer division. Home security systems, personal data protection, that sort of thing. We need a complete rebranding. Logo, website, marketing materials." He slid the tablet toward her. "I've put together some initial thoughts." Zariah looked down at the screen, which showed a mock-up of a sleek, modern website design. "You did this?" "I have some design skills. Nothing like yours, but enough to convey the concept." Zariah scrolled through the images, impressed despite herself. The design was clean and sophisticated, with a color scheme of deep blues and grays. "This is actually good." "Don't sound so surprised," Damien said dryly. "So you want me to do the final designs? That's your proposition?" "Yes, full creative control, with final approval from me. The fee would be substantial." "How substantial?" Damien named a figure that made Zariah nearly choke on her water. "That's a lot of money." "It's the market rate for a complete corporate rebranding," he said evenly. "I don't underpay for quality work." Zariah's mind raced. That kind of money would cover her mother's treatments for months, maybe even a year. It would let her cut back on her other freelance work and focus on finishing her degree. "Why me?" she asked. "You could hire any top design firm in the city." Damien picked up a small appetizer but didn't eat it. "Your work has an authenticity that appeals to me. It's not pretentious or trendy. It's honest." He set the food back, down. "Like you." Zariah felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the sunshine on the rooftop. Thank you. Plus," he added, his voice lighter, "you've seen my panic room. You're already familiar with my security obsession." Zariah laughed. "That's one way to put it." They fell into an easier conversation as they began to eat the appetizers. Zariah asked questions about the project, and Damien answered with surprising openness, explaining his vision for making high-level security accessible to average consumers. "Most people think good security is just for the wealthy or paranoid," he said. "I want to change that perception. Because of what happened to your parents, Zariah said softly. Damien nodded, his expression sobering. Yes, everyone deserves to feel safe in their own home. The main courses arrived, a perfectly cooked piece of fish for Zariah and steak for Damien. The food was exquisite, better than anything Zariah had ever tasted. So, Damien said as they... Will you take the job? Zariah considered. I'd need a formal contract, and I'd have to work around my school schedule and my mother's appointments. Of course, you can work remotely most of the time, set your own hours. I would only need you to come in for occasional meetings. You've thought this through. I always do. He took a sip of water. Is that a yes? Zariah smiled. It's a yes. Something in Damien's face relaxed, as if he'd been tensed for rejection. Good. I'll have my legal team draw up the contract tomorrow. There's one more condition, Zariah added. What's that? No more surprise checks. I want to earn this fairly. Damien studied her for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. They finished their meal with dessert, a delicate chocolate creation that melted in Zariah's mouth. As they ate, she found herself watching Damien. In this setting, away from his fortress-like home, he seemed different. Still reserved, still intense, but somehow more human. What? He asked, catching her gaze. Nothing, just, this isn't how I expected to spend my afternoon when I woke up this morning. Life rarely goes as expected. He paused. Sometimes that's not a bad thing. Their eyes met across the table, and Zariah felt that strange flutter in her stomach again. She quickly looked away. I should get back to my mother soon, she said. Of course. Damien signaled for the check. The car is waiting whenever you're ready. As they stood to leave, he added, I've taken the liberty of having some design software delivered to your apartment, the latest versions with all the necessary tools for the project. You didn't have to do that. It's a business expense, he said simply. You can't do your best work without the right tools. The elevator ride down was quiet, both of them seemingly lost in thought. In the lobby, Damien surprised her by saying, I'll walk you to the car. Outside, the black car was waiting at the curb. Damien opened the door for her, but before she could get in, he said, Zariah. She looked up at him. Yes? Thank you for saying yes. There was something in his voice, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before, that made her heart skip. Thank you. Are you for asking? She replied softly. For a moment they stood there, closer than they had been since the panic room. Then Damien stepped back, his professional demeanor returning. The driver has my private number. Call if you have any questions about the project. Zariah nodded and slid into the car. As it pulled away from the curb, she glanced back to see Damien, still standing there watching her go. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Damien had sent over top-of-the-line design equipment and software. The contract arrived the day after their lunch, offering even better terms than they'd discussed, including a generous advance payment. Zariah threw herself into the project, creating concept after concept for the new cross-security consumer brand. She worked from home most days, sending her designs to Damien through a secure server he'd set up. Their communication was primarily through email and occasional video calls to discuss the project. Damien was surprisingly easy to work with, clear about what he wanted but respectful of her creative process. Sometimes their conversations drifted beyond work, to books they'd read or places they'd visited, but always with a professional undertone. Still, Zariah found herself looking forward to his messages, to the moments when his serious expression would soften into almost a smile at something she said. One evening, as she was working late on a series of logo variations, her phone rang. It was Damien. Is everything okay? She asked, surprised by the call. Everything's fine, he assured her. I just wanted to let you know that I'll be out of the country for the next week, Singapore and Tokyo. If you need anything, Vanessa will be your point of contact. Oh, thanks for letting me know. There was a pause, then Damien added, How is your mother? She's doing really well, actually. The new treatment is working better than the doctors expected. That's good to hear. Another pause, longer this time. Was there something else? Zariah asked. No, Damien cleared his throat. I wanted to tell you that I'm very pleased with your work so far. The designs are excellent. Thank you, Zariah said, smiling though he couldn't see it. That means a lot. I should let you get back to it. Good night, Zariah. Good night, Damien. After. He hung up. Zariah sat staring at her phone, wondering why such a brief conversation had left her feeling so warm. The week of Damien's trip dragged by. Zariah continued working on the project, sending updates to Vanessa, who was unfailingly professional but nowhere near as engaging to talk to as Damien. She told herself she was just eager for his feedback, that her impatience for his return was purely professional. But when her phone chimed with a message from him on the day of his return, back in New York, "Can you come to the office tomorrow to review the final designs?" She couldn't deny the rush of excitement she felt. The next day, Zariah dressed more carefully than usual in a simple but elegant navy dress and the one pair of designer shoes she owned, a splurge from her first big freelance check. Her mother noticed as she was leaving. "You look nice," Sarah said with a knowing smile. "Meeting with the boss?" "It's a big presentation," Zariah replied, avoiding her mother's eyes. "I want to look professional." Sarah didn't sound convinced. "Give Mr. Tall, Dark and Wealthy my regards." "Mom!" "What?" Sarah's eyes twinkled. "You talk about him all the time." "I do not," Zariah protested. "We work together." "If you say so, honey." Sarah patted her daughter's arm. "Just remember what I always taught you. Never settle for less than I deserve," Zariah recited with a smile. "That's my girl." The now familiar black car was waiting outside. The drive to cross security headquarters took them to a sleek skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. Zariah had never been to Damien's office before, and she found herself growing nervous as the elevator climbed to the top floor. The doors opened onto a minimalist reception area with the current cross-security logo displayed on the wall, a simple blue shield that Zariah was hoping to replace with something more dynamic. "Ms. Cole," Vanessa greeted her, rising from behind a sleek desk. "Mr. Cross is expecting you. This way, please." She led Zariah down a corridor lined with glass-walled offices. People looked up as they passed, their curious gazes following her. Clearly, it wasn't every day that Damien Cross invited a young designer to his personal office. Vanessa stopped at a set of double doors at the end of the hall. She knocked once, then opened them. "Ms. Cole is here, Mr. Cross." "Thank you, Vanessa. Send her in." Damien's office was exactly what Zariah had expected: spacious, modern, and impeccably organized. 3 walls were glass, offering a spectacular view of the city. Damien stood by a large conference table, reviewing something on a tablet. He looked up as she entered, and for just a moment his professional mask slipped. Something that looked almost like pleasure flashed across his face before he composed himself again. "Zariah, thank you for coming." He gestured to the table. "I've set everything up for your presentation." Zariah walked over, setting down her portfolio case. "How was your trip?" "Productive." He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. "Singapore is always interesting. I've never been outside the country," Zariah admitted. "Barely been outside New York." Damien looked at her with genuine surprise. "Never? College? Work? Mom's illness?" There hasn't been much time or money for travel. Something shifted in his expression. "Perhaps someday." Before Zariah could respond, the door opened and several people filed in, executives from various departments according to the introductions Damien made. They took seats around the table, all watching Zariah with evaluating eyes. "Ms. Cole has been working on the rebranding for our consumer division," Damien explained. "I've asked you all here to review her final concepts." Zariah felt a flicker of panic. She hadn't realized she would be presenting to a room full of executives. She'd prepared to show her work just to Damien. As if sensing her nervousness, Damien caught her eye and gave her a small, encouraging nod. Somehow, that simple gesture steadied her. Taking a deep breath, Zariah opened her portfolio and began her presentation. She explained her design process, the thinking behind each concept, how the new branding would appeal to everyday consumers while maintaining the company's reputation for excellence. The executives asked questions, some easy, some challenging, but with each answer, Zariah grew more confident. This was her work, her passion, and she knew it inside and out. When she unveiled the final logo design, a stylized door that doubled as a shield, with a keyhole that formed the letter C, there was a moment of silence followed by murmurs of approval. "It's perfect," said one woman who had been introduced as the marketing director. "Simple enough for consumers to recognize instantly, but sophisticated enough for our corporate clients." Others nodded in agreement. Zariah looked to Damien, who had been silent throughout most of the presentation. His face was unreadable. "Thank you, everyone," he said finally. "If you could leave your comments with Vanessa, I'd like to speak with Ms. Cole privately." The executives filed out, several stopping to compliment Zariah on their way. When the door closed behind the last of them, she turned to Damien. "You didn't warn me I'd be presenting to your entire executive team," she said, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. "Would you have prepared any differently if I had? Well, no, but then it wasn't relevant information." He walked to the window, looking out at the city. "You did exceptionally well. They were impressed." "What about you?" Zariah asked. "Were you impressed?" Damien turned to face her. "I expected nothing less." Coming from anyone else, it might have sounded dismissive, but from him it was high praise, a statement of absolute confidence in her abilities. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we implement your designs." He moved back to the table, closing her portfolio with careful hands. "The legal team will draft a new contract for the implementation phase, if you're interested." "I am," Zariah said immediately, "but I have finals coming up in a few weeks. I'll need to work around them." "Of course," Damien handed her the portfolio. "Your education comes first." Their fingers brushed as she took it, and Zariah felt that now familiar flutter in her stomach. She quickly pulled her hand away. "There's something else I wanted to discuss," Damien said, his tone shifting slightly. "I'm hosting a charity gala next weekend for cancer research." Zariah looked up in surprise. "Cancer research?" "Yes." He hesitated, then added, "I thought, given your mother's situation, it might be something you'd be interested in attending." "As a guest, you mean, not serving drinks this time?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Definitely as a guest." Zariah's heart raced. Was he asking her on a date? Joe, that was ridiculous. This was Damien Cross, Billionaire CEO. He was just being considerate, including her in an event related to her mother's illness. "I'd like that," she said carefully. "It's a good cause." "Good." Damien seemed relieved. "I'll have Vanessa send you the details. It's black tie, but don't worry about that. Just give her your sizes, and she'll take care of everything." "Oh no," Zariah said quickly. "I can find something to wear. I don't need—" "It's not charity, Zariah," Damien interrupted. "It's part of your compensation package. All of our executives receive wardrobe allowances for company events." Zariah wanted to argue, but knew it would only make things awkward. "Thank you, then." Damien walked her to the door. "The car will take you home. I have another meeting, or I would see you out myself." "I think I can find the elevator on my own," Zariah said with a smile. "I'm pretty good with directions, except when they lead me into panic rooms." Damien actually laughed, a short, surprised sound that made him look years younger. "Let's hope that was a one-time occurrence." "I don't know," Zariah said, surprised by her own boldness. "It worked out pretty well in the end." Their eyes met, and for a moment the professional pretense between them seemed to thin, revealing something deeper, more personal. Then Damien straightened, his CEO demeanor sliding back into place. "Until the gala, then." "Until the gala," Zariah echoed and walked out of his office, feeling as though something important had just happened, though she couldn't quite say what. The package arrived 3 days later, a large white box with the name of an exclusive boutique embossed on the lid. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was the most beautiful dress Zariah had ever seen. Deep emerald green, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt, it looked like something from a magazine. Underneath were shoes, a small evening bag, and a velvet box containing a simple but elegant silver necklace. A card at the bottom read, "Vanessa selected these based on your professional wardrobe. If they're not to your taste, please let her know. DC." Zariah's mother gasped when she saw the dress. "Oh my goodness, it's stunning." "It's too much," Zariah said, running her fingers over the silky fabric. "I can't accept all this." "Why not?" He's right, it's a business expense. You're representing his company. Sarah held the dress up against her daughter. Besides, you deserve beautiful things, Zariah. You've worked so hard. Zariah thought about returning it all, about finding something more modest to wear, but when she tried on the dress and looked in the mirror, she couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. The dress fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "Oh, honey," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "You look like a princess." Zariah laughed. "I'm hardly Cinderella, Mom." "And he's not exactly Prince Charming," Sarah agreed with a wink. "But every fairy tale needs an update now and then." "It's not a fairy tale," Zariah insisted. "It's business." But as she looked at herself in the mirror, she couldn't help wondering what Damien would think when he saw her in this dress. And that thought had nothing to do with business at all. The night of the gala arrived clear and cool, with stars visible even through the city's light pollution. The car picked Zariah up at 7, and for once her mother was well enough to walk her out, waving from the sidewalk like Zariah was headed to prom instead of a charity event. The gala was being held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, with the entire north wing closed off for the event. As the car pulled up to the entrance, Zariah saw photographers lined up behind velvet ropes, capturing the arrivals of the city's elite. "I can't go through there," she told the driver in panic. "Isn't there a side entrance or something?" "Mr. Cross said to bring you to the main entrance," the driver replied apologetically. "He's waiting for you there." Zariah took a deep breath. She could do this. It was just a walk from the car to the door, nothing to be nervous about. The driver opened her door and she stepped out, immediately blinded by camera flashes. She froze, uncertain where to go, when a warm hand touched her elbow. "You made it," Damien said, appearing beside her as if by magic. He looked devastating in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his usually serious face softened by a genuine smile. But what struck Zariah most was the way he was looking at her, as if she were the only person in the crowded entrance. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "Thank you," she managed. "So do you. I mean handsome." "You look handsome." A flash of amusement crossed his face. "Shall we go in?" He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. Together they walked past the photographers, who called out Damien's name and asked questions he smoothly ignored. Inside, the museum had been transformed. Soft lighting illuminated the ancient artifacts and artwork, while elegant tables had been set up in the central hall. A string quartet played in one corner, and servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. "This is incredible," Zariah said, looking around in awe. "It's one of my favorite spaces in the city," Damien replied. "I come here sometimes when I need to think." The image of Damien Cross wandering alone through the quiet museum was oddly touching. Zariah was about to comment on it when they were approached by an older couple. "Damien, there you are," the woman said, air-kissing his cheek. Her eyes immediately went to Zariah with undisguised curiosity. "Margaret, Robert," Damien greeted them. "This is Zariah Cole. She's the designer behind our new consumer brand identity." "How lovely," Margaret said, though her expression suggested she had expected a different introduction. "Are you with one of the big agencies, dear?" "No, I'm independent," Zariah said. "And still in school, actually." Robert looked impressed. "Damien doesn't work with just anyone. You must be exceptional." Before Zariah could respond, they were joined by more people, all eager to speak with Damien. He introduced her to each of them the same way, as the designer behind the new brand, but he kept her by his side, his hand occasionally touching the small of her back when they moved through the crowd. It was overwhelming. These people ran the city, controlled fortunes, influenced politics. And yet, as the evening progressed, Zariah realized they were just people, some kind, some pretentious, all of them with their own insecurities and agendas. During dinner, she was seated next to Damien at the head table. The conversation flowed easily between them, and more than once she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. After the meal, there was dancing. Zariah watched as couples filled the floor, moving gracefully to the music. "Would you like to dance?" Damien asked unexpectedly. Zariah looked at him in surprise. "I didn't think you were the dancing type." "There's a lot you don't know about me," he said, standing and offering his hand. She took it, allowing him to lead her onto the dance floor. His hand was warm at her waist, his touch light but secure as they moved to the music. "I haven't danced since my cousin's wedding 3 years ago," Zoraya admitted. "I'm probably terrible." "You're doing fine," Damien assured her. "Just follow my lead." And she did, finding it surprisingly easy to move with him. They didn't speak, but the silence between them was comfortable, filled with something unspoken, but increasingly undeniable. As the song ended, Damien's phone buzzed in his pocket. He reluctantly pulled away to check it, his expression immediately shifting to concern. "What is it?" Zoraya asked. "Security alert at the house," he said distractedly. "Probably nothing, but I need to check." He looked at her apologetically. "I'm sorry, I have to step out for a moment." "Of course," Zoraya said. "Go ahead." Damien hesitated, then touched her arm briefly. "I'll be right back. Don't disappear on me." He strode away, already dialing a number on his phone. Zoraya made her way back to their table, feeling oddly bereft without him beside her. She was sipping her water when a woman in a striking red dress approached. She was beautiful in a cold, perfect way, with platinum blonde hair and sharp features. "So you're Damien's new project," she said without preamble, taking Damien's empty seat. "Excuse me," Zoraya said, startled. "I'm Victoria Pierce." The woman said it as if Zoraya should recognize the name. "Damien and I have known each other for years." "Oh," Zoraya said, unsure how to respond. "It's nice to meet you." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "He does this, you know, finds someone different, takes them under his wing, makes them feel special." Zoraya felt a chill run through her. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you?" Victoria leaned closer. "The designer he hired from the waitstaff, it's all over the gossip columns. How you spent the night locked in his panic room." Zoraya's blood ran cold. "That's not... How did you... Please. In our circle, nothing stays secret for long." Victoria took a sip of Zoraya's champagne. "I just thought you should know that you're not the first charity case he's taken on. He has a soft spot for helping the less fortunate." Zoraya's cheeks burned with humiliation and anger. "I'm not a charity case, I'm his employee." "For now," Victoria agreed with a cold smile, "until the novelty wears off, or until he realizes that someone like you could never really fit into his world." Before Zoraya could respond, Victoria stood. "Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm sure it will make a lovely memory for you to look back on when you're back to serving drinks at parties like this." She walked away, leaving Zoraya sitting alone, her earlier happiness shattered. She looked around the opulent room, at the wealthy, powerful people laughing and dancing, and suddenly felt like an imposter. In her borrowed dress, was Victoria right? Was she just Damien's latest project? Someone he'd found amusing because she was so different from his usual circle? The thought made her stomach twist. When Damien returned a few minutes later, his face relaxed when he saw her still waiting. "False alarm," he said. "Just a system glitch." He must have noticed her expression because his smile faded. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Zoraya said, forcing a smile. "Just tired, I guess." Damien studied her face. "Something happened while I was gone. What was it?" "It's nothing, really." She stood up. "Actually, I think I should go. It's getting late. And I have a paper due Monday." "Zoraya." Damien caught her hand. "Talk to me, please." The genuine concern in his voice almost broke her resolve. But Victoria's words echoed in her mind. "I just don't belong here," she said quietly, pulling her hand away. "This isn't my world, Damien, and I think we both know that." Confusion and hurt flashed across his face. "That's not true, isn't it? Look around. These are your people. I'm the girl you rescued from a panic room, your latest charity project." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Victoria spoke to you." "So you don't deny it?" Zoraya asked, her voice catching. "Deny what? That she's jealous and manipulative?" "No, I don't deny that." Damien moved closer, lowering his voice. "Whatever she told you, it's not true. Then why is our night in the panic room in the gossip columns?" "You promised no one would know." Damien's expression darkened. "I didn't tell anyone. It must have been someone on the security team or the catering staff." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Zariah, you have to believe me. You're not a charity case or a project. He stopped, seemingly unable to find the words. "I'm what?" Zariah asked, her heart pounding, but Damien just shook his head. "Let me take you home. We can talk in the car." "No." Zariah took a step back. "I need some space, some time to think." "Zariah, please, Damien, just let me go." The hurt in his eyes was almost enough to make her stay. But Zariah turned and walked away, threading through the crowd of beautiful, wealthy people who had never known what it was like to count pennies for medication or work 3 jobs to pay rent. Outside, she bypassed the line of waiting cars and hailed a taxi. As it pulled away from the curb, she looked back to see Damien standing on the steps of the museum, watching her go, his face a mask of confusion and something that looked almost like loss. And for the second time since meeting Damien Cross, Zariah found herself in a car driving away from him, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. I've written part 3 of the story, continuing the development of Zariah and Damien's relationship. In this section, Damien offers Zariah a job designing the rebranding for his company. Their professional relationship develops with underlying personal attraction. Zariah presents her design work to Damien's executive team. Damien invites Zariah to a cancer research charity gala. At the gala, their connection deepens, but is interrupted by Victoria, who suggests Zariah is just Damien's charity case. The part ends with Zariah leaving the gala upset, questioning whether she truly belongs in Damien's world. The narrative maintains the straightforward style with simple language while building emotional tension between the characters. I've focused on their growing feelings for each other and the obstacles they face from both external forces and their own insecurities. Zariah spent the weekend avoiding Damien's calls and messages. She threw herself into her schoolwork, finishing her paper early and studying for finals until her eyes burned. But no matter how hard she tried to focus, her mind kept returning to the hurt in Damien's eyes as she'd walked away. By Monday morning, there were 3 missed calls from him and a single text. "Please let me explain." She didn't respond. Instead, she sent a professional email to Vanessa, attaching the final design files and thanking her for the opportunity to work with Cross Security. She ended by saying she wouldn't be continuing with the implementation phase due to school commitments. It was the coward's way out, and Zariah knew it. But the thought of facing Damien again, of hearing him confirm that yes, she had been a novelty, a momentary distraction from his real life, was too painful to bear. Her mother watched her with worried eyes as she moved around their small apartment like a ghost. "Are you going to tell me what happened?" Sarah asked on Sunday night, as they sat together watching TV. "Nothing happened," Zariah said, staring at the screen without seeing it. "I just realized some things don't work out, no matter how much you might want them to." Sarah took her daughter's hand. "Is this about Damien?" Zariah looked at her in surprise. "How did you—" "I'm your mother. I notice things." Sarah squeezed her hand. "Like how your eyes light up when you talk about him, or how you've been checking your phone every 5 minutes since you came home from that gala." Zariah sighed. "It's complicated. Love usually is." "It's not love," Zariah said quickly. I don't know what it is. But it doesn't matter. We're too different. His world and mine, they don't mix." Sarah gave her a knowing look. "Is that what you think or what someone told you to think?" Zariah remembered Victoria's cold smile, her cutting words. "A little of both, I guess." "Well, I didn't raise you to let other people decide what you can and can't have." Sarah tapped Zariah's knee gently. "If he matters to you, at least hear what he has to say." Zariah nodded but still didn't pick up her phone. What was the point? Even if Victoria was wrong, even if Damien did care for her in some way, what future could they possibly have? He lived in a world of mansions and private jets. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn with medical bills piling up. Some gaps were too wide to bridge. On Tuesday morning, Zariah was rushing to class when her phone rang. It wasn't Damien, but her mother. "Mom? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, honey, but there's someone here to see you." Zariah frowned. "Who?" Damien Cross. He's sitting in our living room right now. Zariah nearly dropped her phone. What? Why is he? How did he? He said he tried calling, but you wouldn't answer. Sarah's voice held a hint of amusement. He's very persistent. I'm on my way to class. I can't. He says he'll wait. Sarah lowered her voice. Honey, the man looks miserable. Whatever happened between you two, I think you should come home and talk to him. Zariah closed her eyes, torn between the urge to run away and the growing realization that she couldn't avoid this conversation forever. Tell him I'll be there in 30 minutes. She turned around and headed back toward the subway, her heart pounding with each step. What could Damien possibly want to say that he had to come to her apartment to say it? When she arrived home, she paused outside the door, gathering her courage. Then she took a deep breath and walked in. Damien was sitting on their old couch, looking ridiculously out of place in his expensive suit. He stood when she entered, his face lighting up before uncertainty took over. Zariah, he said, her name, sounding like both a greeting and a question. I'll give you two some privacy, Sarah said, heading for her bedroom. She squeezed Zariah's arm as she passed. Remember what I said? When the bedroom door closed, Zariah turned to Damien. What are you doing here? You wouldn't answer my calls. He took a step toward her, then stopped as if afraid of pushing too far. I had to see you. Why? I sent the files. The project is done. This isn't about the project. Damien ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Zariah had come to recognize. As a sign of frustration, it's about what happened at the gala, about what Victoria said to you. It doesn't matter what she said. It does if it made you run away. He moved closer, his eyes searching her face. Zariah, whatever she told you, it wasn't true, wasn't it? Zariah crossed her arms, protecting herself. She said it's all over the gossip columns, about us being locked in together, about you hiring me after. I never spoke to the press, Damien said firmly. Someone leaked the story, yes, but I've been trying to shut it down. That's what the security alert was about that night. My team traced the leak to one of the guards who was on duty that night. He's been fired. That doesn't change the fact that people are talking, that they think I'm... She couldn't finish the sentence. I don't care what people think, Damien said, his voice rising slightly. I've never cared what people think. If I did, I wouldn't have built walls around myself for years. I wouldn't have hidden in my own home during parties. Until you found someone new and interesting to rescue, Zariah said bitterly. Someone different from your usual crowd. Damien's expression hardened. Is that what you think? That you were some kind of novelty act for me? What else am I supposed to think? You're Damien Cross. You could have anyone, work with anyone. Why me? Because you saw me, he said simply. Not the billionaire, not the CEO. Me, the man who built rooms to hide in, who throws parties he doesn't attend, who had everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. Zariah felt her defenses weakening at the raw honesty in his voice. That night in the panic room, he continued, when you asked if I was happy, no one had asked me that in years, maybe ever. And you looked at me like you actually cared about the answer. I did care, Zariah admitted softly. Damien took another step toward her. I hired you because you're talented, because your work is exceptional. But I kept finding reasons to talk to you, to see you, because when I'm with you, I feel real, like maybe I don't have to hide anymore. Zariah's heart was pounding so hard, she was sure he could hear it. Damien, let me finish, he said, his voice gentle but determined. Victoria Pierce is my ex. We dated briefly 3 years ago. It was convenient, same social circle, families knew each other, but there was nothing real about it. She's been trying to get back together ever since, and she saw you as a threat. A threat? Zariah couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. Me? Yes, you. Damien was standing right in front of her now. Because she saw what I've been trying not to admit to myself, that I'm falling for you, Zariah, that I have been since the moment you stood in my panic room and asked me if I was happy. Zariah felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He reached out, hesitantly taking her hand. I know we come from different worlds, I know it's complicated, but I also know that when you left that gala, you took something with you. Something I don't think I can live without anymore. Zariah. looked down at their joined hands, his perfectly manicured, hers with traces of ink from her design work. Such different hands, different lives. "I'm not part of your world, Damien," she said quietly. "I never will be." "Then I'll be part of yours," he replied without hesitation, "or we'll build a new one together." The certainty in his voice made her look up, meeting his eyes. There was no doubt there, no hesitation, just that intense focus she'd come to, Sano now directed entirely at her. "It won't be easy," she warned. "Nothing worth having ever is. People will talk. Let them." Zariah felt a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "Do you have an answer for everything?" "Not everything," Damien said, his own lips curving into a smile. "I still don't know if you feel the same way." Instead of answering, Zariah stepped forward and kissed him. It was a gentle kiss, questioning at first, then growing more certain as his arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Damien rested his forehead against hers. "I'll take that as a yes." Zariah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in days. "Yes, but I'm still not sure how this works, us, I mean." "Neither am I," Damien admitted. "But I'm willing to figure it out if you are." A soft ahem from the hallway made them turn. Sarah stood there, a knowing smile on her face. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, not looking sorry at all, "but I was wondering if Damien would like to stay for lunch. I made sandwiches." Damien looked at Zariah, a question in his eyes. She nodded. "I'd like that very much, Mrs. Cole," he said. "Thank you." "Call me Sarah," she replied, heading for the kitchen. "Anyone who looks at my daughter the way you do can skip the formalities." Zariah felt her cheeks flush, but Damien just squeezed her hand. "Your mother is very perceptive. She always has been," Zariah agreed. "It's annoying sometimes." "I heard that," Sarah called from the kitchen. They both laughed, and Zariah felt the last of her doubts melting away. This, whatever it was between them, wouldn't be easy. But maybe, just maybe, it could work. Over the next few weeks, Zariah and Damien began the delicate process of merging their very different lives. She continued working on the cross-security rebranding, but now as a consultant rather than an employee. He made time in his busy schedule to attend her end-of-semester art show, standing proudly beside her as she explained her designs to her professors and classmates. The gossip columns had a field day when they were first spotted together in public. "Billionaire's Panic Room Romance" read one particularly cringe-worthy headline, but Damien's legal team quickly shut down the more invasive stories, and eventually, the novelty wore off. What didn't wear off was the way Zariah felt when Damien looked at her, or the way he seemed to relax more each time he visited her in Brooklyn. He started leaving suits behind for jeans and t-shirts, began eating at local diners instead of five-star restaurants, and even developed a fondness for the corner bodega's coffee, which he claimed was better than anything his private chef made. For her part, Zariah found herself growing more comfortable in Damien's world too. She still felt out of place at charity galas and board dinners, but with him beside her, steady and supportive, she learned to navigate the complex social waters of the ultra-wealthy. Sarah's health continued to improve with her new treatment, and when Damien quietly arranged for the best oncologist in the country to take on her case, Zariah didn't protest. She'd learned that sometimes accepting help wasn't about charity or pity, it was about love. One evening in late summer, Damien invited Zariah to his house for dinner. Unlike the night of the party, she arrived through the front door, welcomed by name by the security staff. "Where is everyone?" she asked as they walked through the quiet house. "No staff tonight?" "I gave them the night off," Damien said, leading her through a series of hallways. "I wanted us to be alone." Zariah raised an eyebrow. "Are you cooking?" "God, no," Damien laughed. "I ordered in, but I do have a surprise for you." He stopped in front of a familiar door, and Zariah felt a jolt of recognition. "Is that the panic room?" Damien confirmed. "Where it all began. Why are we here?" "I've made some changes to it. I wanted to show you." He pressed his palm to the scanner and the door slid open. Zariah stepped inside and gasped. The room had been completely transformed. The stark utilitarian space was now a cozy studio, with drawing tables, state-of-the-art computers, and walls covered in pinboards. In one corner, A small seating area had been set up with comfortable chairs and a coffee table. But what took her breath away were the walls. Projected onto them were dozens of her designs, from school projects to the cross-security rebranding, all displayed like a gallery exhibition. "Damien," she whispered, turning in a slow circle. "What is all this?" "Thought you might like a dedicated workspace when you're here," he said, watching her reaction carefully. "For your freelance projects or just to create, and I wanted to showcase your work properly." Zariah walked to one of the design tables, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "This is incredible." "There's more," Damien said. He pressed a button on a panel, and the projections changed. Now the walls showed images of her mother's latest scans, all clear, and papers for a foundation with Sarah's name on it. "What is this?" Zariah asked, her voice catching. "The Sarah Cole Foundation for Cancer Research and Treatment," Damien explained. "Your mother agreed to let me set it up. It will fund research and provide financial assistance to families struggling with medical bills." Tears filled Zariah's eyes. "Damien, I don't know what to say. There's one more thing." He pressed the button again and a new image appeared, a beautiful building in downtown Brooklyn, with a sign that read, "Cole Design Studio." "I bought the building," Damien said quietly. "It can be your own design firm if you want it, or just a studio for your personal work." "Whatever you decide." Zariah turned to him, overwhelmed. "Why would you do all this?" Damien took her hands in his. "Because I love you, Zariah. Because you unlocked something in me that I thought was lost forever." "I love you too," she whispered, the words coming easily, naturally. Damien smiled, but there was nervousness in his eyes that she rarely saw. "There's one last thing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. Zariah's heart stopped. "Damien!" "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "Or at least, not yet. I know we're not ready for that." He opened the box to reveal a key, a simple silver key on a chain. "What is this?" she asked. "A key to this house," Damien said. "To every door, including this one." He nodded toward the panic room. "No more locked doors between us, ever." Zariah took the key, feeling its weight in her palm. "No more hiding." "No more hiding," he promised. "From anything or anyone." She closed her hand around the key, then looked up at him. "What if I want to lock the door sometimes?" Damien looked puzzled. "Why would you want to do that?" Zariah stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Privacy has its advantages." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a spark of heat. "In that case," he murmured, his lips close to hers, "I think we could make an exception." She laughed, feeling happier than she'd ever thought possible. "I think I'm ready to be locked in with you again, Damien Cross." "This time," he said, smiling. As he reached for the control panel, "I'm only locking the door if you say yes." Zariah's answer was a kiss, deep and certain, as the door closed behind them with a soft, familiar click. Inside the room that had once been built for fear and isolation, they found something neither of them had expected. A safe place to be vulnerable, to be seen, to be loved. Not a panic room anymore, but a room filled with possibility. And as Damien held her close, Zariah knew that sometimes the wrong turns led to exactly the right places, and that sometimes being trapped was the first step toward being truly free. 6 months later, the cross-security consumer launch was a resounding success. Zariah's designs were praised throughout the industry, and the Cole Design Studio was already gaining recognition for its innovative work with both large corporations and small local businesses. Sarah's cancer was in full remission, and she had taken on an active role in the foundation that bore her name, bringing her nursing experience to bear in helping other patients navigate their treatment journeys. As for Damien and Zariah, they had found their own rhythm, dividing their time between his mansion and her Brooklyn apartment, which she'd insisted on keeping, to stay grounded, she explained. And he understood. The panic room remained Zariah's studio, but it had acquired a few more personal touches, photos of them together, a comfortable couch where Damien often sat while she worked, books they both loved. It was no longer a place to hide, but a place to create, to connect, to be together. And if sometimes they locked the door behind them, well, that was their business. One evening as they sat together on the rooftop garden Damien had built atop the mansion, Zariah's influence again, bringing open air and growing things to his fortress, she looked over at him and asked, "Are you happy?" It was the same question she'd asked that first night, but this time Damien didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said simply, taking her hand. "For the first time in my life, completely." Zariah smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, two people from different worlds who had found a way to build their own. Not his, not hers, but something new, something shared. And as darkness fell and the first stars appeared overhead, Zariah thought about keys and locks, about walls and doors, about all the ways people kept themselves safe, and all the ways they let themselves be found. Sometimes the scariest thing wasn't being trapped, but being free. Free to love, free to hope, free to trust. Damien had built a room to keep danger out, never realizing that he'd locked himself in along with his fears, until she had walked in and shown him the way out. "What are you thinking about?" Damien asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Zariah smiled. "About how sometimes getting locked in is the only way to find the key." Damien nodded, understanding as he always did. "And sometimes the key was there. All along, we just needed someone to show us how to use it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not the one with the key this time, but something else entirely. Zariah's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a ring, simple but stunning, with a single emerald that matched the dress she'd worn to the gala. "Zariah Cole," Damien said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "Will you marry me?" And as the stars came out above them, as the city lights twinkled below, Zariah gave him the answer that had been waiting in her heart since that first night, the night they'd been locked in together, and found the key to something neither of them had been looking for, but both had desperately needed. "Yes," she said, "yes, I will." The endive completed the final part of Locked In With You, bringing Zariah and Damien's story to its conclusion. In part 4, Zariah avoids Damien after the gala incident. Cutting off contact, Damien comes to her apartment to explain and confess his feelings. They begin to build a relationship that bridges their different worlds. Damien transforms the panic room into a studio for Zariah's work. He creates a cancer foundation in her mother's name and buys a building for Zariah's design studio. He gives her a key to his house, symbolizing no more locked doors between us. The story concludes 6 months later with Damien proposing on the rooftop garden. Throughout the story, I've maintained the straightforward narrative style with simple language and focused on the emotional journey of the characters. The story follows the premise you provided, with the panic room serving as both a literal and metaphorical space where two people from different worlds connect and find something unexpected together.